Marcus stood frozen in the doorway of the plantation house, staring at the family portrait hanging in the grand hallway. His hands trembled as he clutched the silver tray, china rattling against crystal. The boy in the painting had his exact face, the same sharp jawline, the same deep-set brown eyes, the same unusual birthmark above the left eyebrow. It was impossible. Yet there it was, immortalized in oil and canvas for all to see. The master's legitimate son, William Hartley, Jr., looked like he could be Marcus's twin. And in that moment, 23 years of lies began to unravel, revealing a truth that would shatter two families and rewrite the destiny of everyone in Hartley Manor. The summer of 1858 arrived at Hartley Manor with suffocating heat that seemed to press down on the Virginia countryside like a heavy hand. Marcus had lived his entire life within the boundaries of this plantation, born in the slave quarters to a woman named Sarah who cleaned the master's house. She died when he was only 12, taking her secrets to an unmarked grave behind the cotton fields. He remembered her hands most of all, constantly moving, constantly working, but always gentle when they touched his face. Now 23, Marcus worked as a house servant, a position that came with slightly better food and clothing than the field hands received, but no less bondage. He had learned to make himself invisible, to move through rooms like a shadow, to hear everything and reveal nothing. It was a survival skill. Every enslaved person mastered, or they didn't survive long. That particular morning started like any other. Marcus woke before dawn in the small room he shared with two other house servants, dressed in the livery that marked him as property of the Hartley family, and began his duties. He set the breakfast table, polished silver, and prepared the drawing room for the family's morning gathering. It was during one of these routine tasks that his life changed forever. Mrs. Hartley had requested that the family portrait be moved from the dining room to the main hallway, where visitors would see it immediately upon entering. Marcus and another servant, an older man named Joseph, carefully lifted the heavy frame. As they positioned it on the wall, Marcus found himself face to face with the painting for the first time in years. He had seen it before, of course, but always from a distance, always while performing some other task. He had never truly looked at it. The portrait showed Master William Hartley Sr., his wife Rebecca, and their son William Jr., who was away at university in Boston. The family sat in formal poses, dressed in their finest clothes, the very picture of Southern aristocratic wealth. But it was young William's face that made Marcus's blood run cold. It was his own face, staring back at him. Joseph noticed Marcus's reaction immediately. The older man's eyes widened, darting between Marcus and the portrait. He grabbed Marcus's arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "Don't," he whispered urgently. "Don't say nothing. Don't even think it." But it was too late. The thought had already taken root in Marcus's mind, spreading like wildfire through everything he thought he knew about himself. The resemblance wasn't just similar. It was identical. They could have been twins, except William Jr. was born 3 months before Marcus, in a proper bed with a doctor present, while Marcus was born in a slave cabin with only a midwife attending. The implications crashed over Marcus like a wave. Master Hartley had many faults, but the workers whispered about his particular attention to the women in his household. Marcus's mother Sarah had been beautiful. Even the other slaves said so. She had worked in the main house since she was 16. The timing aligned perfectly. For the rest of that day, Marcus moved through his duties in a daze. His hands performed their tasks automatically while his mind raced with questions. Had his mother known? Of course she had. Did Master Hartley know? Surely he must have noticed the resemblance as Marcus grew older. Did Mrs. Hartley know? Was that why she always looked at Marcus with such cold hatred in her eyes, why she found fault with everything he did? That evening, as Marcus cleared the dinner dishes, he overheard a conversation that made his heart stop. Master Hartley was speaking to his wife in the sitting room. "William arrives home from Boston next week," the master said. "He's bringing a photographer with him, some new hobby he's picked up, wants to make photographs of the plantation." Marcus nearly dropped the crystal glass he was holding. A photograph, the new technology that captured reality with perfect accuracy, not like paintings that could be subtly altered to hide uncomfortable truths. If William Jr. and Marcus were ever in the same photograph, there would be no denying what nature had written on both their faces. The next few days passed in agonizing slowness. Marcus tried to continue his work as normal, but he caught Joseph watching him with worried eyes. The older man had been at Hartley Manor his entire life and had seen everything. One night, as they prepared the house for bed, Joseph finally pulled Marcus aside. "Your mama made me promise something before she died," Joseph said quietly. "Made me swear I'd never tell you the truth unless you figured it out yourself. Said it would only bring you pain to know." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Tell me." Joseph glanced around to make sure they were alone. "Master Hartley forced himself on your mama when she was 17. Just a girl. When she got pregnant, Mrs. Hartley wanted to sell her away, but the master kept her here. Some kind of twisted possession, I think. Your mama loved you fierce, Marcus. She wanted better for you, but there wasn't no better to be had. Not for us." The words confirmed what Marcus had already suspected, but hearing them spoken aloud made them real in a way that cut deep into his soul. He was the master's son just as much as William Jr. was. They shared the same blood, the same father. Yet one was heir to a fortune, while the other was property that could be bought and sold. "What do I do?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. Joseph shook his head sadly. "Nothing. You do nothing. You survive. That's all any of us can do." But Marcus couldn't accept that answer. Not anymore. The truth was out there now, living and breathing in his mind. When young William arrived home with his photographer, everyone would see what Marcus had seen. The question was what would happen then. The day William Jr. returned to Hartley Manor. Or the entire household was in chaos. The master's heir arrived in a fancy carriage with 3 trunks of luggage and a thin young man named Mr. Patterson who carried an enormous camera and boxes of photographic equipment. Marcus watched from the servants' entrance as William Jr. stepped down from the carriage, and it was like looking into a mirror. They had the same height, the same build, the same way of moving. William was dressed in expensive clothes and carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never known fear or want. But strip away those external differences, and they could have been the same person. The household staff whispered. Marcus could feel their eyes on him, see them glancing between him and the young master. Mrs. Hartley's face went pale when she first saw the two of them in the same room. Master Hartley's jaw clenched, and he quickly sent Marcus away on an errand that took him to the far end of the property. But Marcus knew he couldn't hide forever. William Jr. had announced his intention to photograph everything and everyone on the plantation, from the main house to the fields to the workers themselves. He said it was for an art project, that photography was the future of visual documentation. He seemed completely oblivious to the bomb he was about to detonate. 3 days after William Jr.'s return, the inevitable happened. The young master had set up his photography equipment in the garden, taking portraits of the family and the house staff. Marcus had managed to avoid being photographed so far, but Mrs. Hartley suddenly insisted that all the house servants be included in a group photograph. "For posterity," she said with a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. "So we have a record of everyone who serves this household." Marcus understood immediately. She wanted proof. She wanted a photograph that would force her husband to confront what he had created. It was a dangerous game she was playing, one that could destroy them all. As the servants lined up for the photograph, William Jr. directed them with cheerful enthusiasm. When his eyes landed on Marcus, he stopped mid-sentence. For a long moment, the young master simply stared, his expression shifting from confusion to shock to something like recognition. "What's your name?" William asked. "Marcus, sir," he replied, keeping his eyes down as he had been trained to do. "Look at me, Marcus. It was a command." Marcus raised his eyes and met William Jr.'s gaze. He watched the other young man's face go through a series of emotions. Disbelief, horror, understanding. William Jr. turned to look at his father, who had come out to watch the photography session. Master Hartley's face was stone. "Continue with your photograph, William." But the moment had been broken. Mr. Patterson, the photographer, was staring openly between William Jr. and Marcus with his mouth slightly open. Several of the other servants had backed away, sensing danger. Mrs. Hartley stood in the doorway. "Oh, F the house," her hands gripping the frame so tightly her knuckles were white. William Jr. set down his equipment slowly. "Father, we need to speak. Privately. There's nothing to discuss. There's everything to discuss. William's voice rose, the first crack in his aristocratic composure. That man has my face. That man looks exactly like me. How is that possible? The silence that followed was deafening. Master Hartley's expression turned cold and dangerous. You will go to your room. We will discuss this later. No. William Jr. stood his ground, and Marcus saw a flash of respect in the young man's eyes despite everything. We will discuss this now, in front of everyone, because everyone can see the truth anyway. Mrs. Hartley made a small, strangled sound. Master Hartley took a step toward his son, his hand raised, but William didn't flinch. You will not strike me, father, not about this, not when you're the one who created this situation. William turned to Marcus, his expression complex and conflicted. Your mother, who was she? Marcus knew he could be beaten for speaking out of turn, sold away, or worse. But something in William Jr.'s face, so like his own, gave him courage. Sarah. Her name was Sarah. Recognition flickered in Master Hartley's eyes. William Jr. saw it too. The woman who died when I was away at school, William said softly. The one who used to bring me warm milk when I couldn't sleep as a child. The one who sang songs while she worked. He looked at Marcus with new eyes. She was your mother, yes, sir, and my father. William couldn't finish the sentence. Master Hartley's voice cut through the garden like a whip. That's enough. William, inside. Now, the rest of you back to work. But William Jr. didn't move. Instead, he did something that shocked everyone present. He extended his hand to Marcus. Not in the dismissive way a master might hand something to a servant, but as an equal, as a brother. I'm sorry, William said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm sorry for what was done to you, for what was done to your mother, for the life you've been forced to live. Marcus stared at the outstretched hand, afraid to take it, afraid not to. Taking that hand meant acknowledging the truth out loud. It meant changing everything. But that change was already here, already happening. Whether he reached for it or not, he clasped William's hand. The grip was firm, warm, and heartbreakingly familiar. They were brothers, half-brothers born into worlds that should never have existed, let alone existed simultaneously on the same piece of land. Master Hartley exploded. You fool. Do you have any idea what you've done? The scandal this will cause? The questions people will ask? Good, William said, still holding Marcus's hand. Let them ask. Let them see. You created this, father. You forced yourself on a young woman in your power, and you created a son that you've enslaved. How is that anything less than monstrous? Mrs. Hartley began to weep, great heaving sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and ancient in her chest. I knew, she gasped. I've always known. Every time I looked at that boy, I saw you, William. I saw my husband's sin, and I hated him for it. I hated that poor woman. I even hated you, Marcus, and you were just an innocent child. The truth was spilling out now, unstoppable as a flood. Mr. Patterson, the photographer, had quietly packed up his equipment and disappeared, but not before Marcus caught a glimpse of his expression. There had been no judgment there, only a kind of sad understanding, as if he had seen this story play out before in different houses, different plantations, different families built on the same foundation of violence and lies. That night, after the household had fallen into a tense, fragile silence, William Jr. came to find Marcus in the servants' quarters. It was unprecedented for the master's son to venture into these spaces, but William seemed beyond caring about propriety. I'm leaving for Boston tomorrow, William said, and I want you to come with me. Marcus felt his heart leap and plummet simultaneously. Sir, I'm not free to go anywhere. Then I'll buy your freedom. I have money of my own from my mother's family. I'll purchase you from my father and manumit you. Your father will never agree to that. William's jaw set in a line that Marcus recognized from his own reflection. Then I'll make him agree. Or I'll take the story to every newspaper. From here to Massachusetts. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man William Hartley is. I'll destroy his reputation, his business connections, everything he values. That will destroy your family. This family is already destroyed, William said bitterly. It was destroyed the moment my father decided his desires were more important than another human being's dignity and freedom. I can't undo what he did. I can't bring back your mother or give you back the childhood you should have had. But I can do this one thing. I can set you free." Marcus wanted to believe it was possible, but he had lived too long under the weight of bondage to trust in miraculous rescues. And what about the others? What about Joseph and the field hands and everyone else who's trapped here? William looked stricken. "I can't save everyone. I wish I could, but I can't." "Then maybe freedom for just one person isn't really freedom at all," Marcus said quietly. "Maybe it's just another form of privilege." The two young men sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of history and injustice pressing down on them. They shared blood, but they had lived such vastly different lives that they might as well have come from different planets. Finally, William spoke. "Then help me understand. Tell me what I can do, because I can't go back to Boston and pretend I didn't see the truth. I can't take photographs of beautiful landscapes and call it art while knowing that my own brother is enslaved 50 miles away." Marcus thought of his mother, of her hands always moving, always working. He thought of Joseph's warning to do nothing, to survive. But he also thought of the photograph that would exist now, the one that showed the truth in black and white. That photograph was evidence. It was proof. It was power in its own way. "Get the photograph from Mr. Patterson," Marcus said, "the one that shows us together. Make copies of it. Send them to abolition societies in the North. Let people see with their own eyes what slavery really means. It's not just strangers in fields. It's brothers divided. It's families torn apart by the same man who claims to be a patriarch. Use that truth. Make it matter." William nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "And you?" "I'll survive," Marcus said, echoing Joseph's words but with a new determination. "I'll survive, and I'll wait. Change is coming, whether your father wants to acknowledge it or not. The country is tearing itself apart over slavery. One day, maybe soon, that photograph might be the thing that helps people understand why freedom matters, why it's worth fighting for." The next morning, William Jr. did leave for Boston, but not before having a final confrontation with his father. Marcus didn't hear the details, but the entire household heard the shouting. When William's carriage pulled away, Master Hartley looked 10 years older, his face gray and drawn. Mrs. Hartley stopped speaking to her husband entirely. She began spending her days writing letters, and Marcus later learned that she had contacted family members in the North, beginning the process of separating herself from the plantation and its sins. As for Marcus, his life at Hartley Manor changed in subtle but significant ways. Master Hartley could no longer pretend he didn't exist, could no longer ignore the walking reminder of his crimes. He didn't free Marcus, but he also didn't sell him away, perhaps afraid of what William Jr. might do if he did. It was a strange kind of stalemate, tense and uncomfortable for everyone involved. But Marcus had something now that he hadn't had before, proof of his existence as more than just property. Somewhere in Boston, William Jr. had copies of that photograph. The truth was out there, documented and undeniable. 3 years later, when the Civil War finally came and Union soldiers marched through Virginia, one of them carried a photograph in his pocket. It showed 2 young men with the same face, one dressed in fine clothes and one in a servant's livery standing side by side. The soldier had seen it in an abolition newspaper with the caption, "The Sin of Slavery," written on human faces. When the soldier met Marcus during the liberation of Hartley Manor, he pulled out the worn photograph. "I've been carrying this for 2 years," he said. "Showed it to people whenever they asked why we were fighting. You're famous, you know, you and your brother. You helped people understand." Marcus took the photograph. With shaking hands, seeing himself and William frozen in that garden moment when truth had broken through generations of lies. His mother Sarah had not lived to see this day, but she had lived in him, had made him strong enough to survive until freedom came. After the war, Marcus went north and reunited with William Jr., who had served in the Union Army as a photographer, documenting the conflict. The 2 brothers were never truly close, their lives too different, their experiences too divergent. But they maintained a relationship built on mutual respect and acknowledgement of what they shared. Marcus became a teacher, helping newly freed people learn to read and write. He kept that photograph from the garden on his desk. not as a reminder of shame or pain, but as evidence of survival. Two faces, identical in feature, but divided by an unjust system that eventually crumbled under the weight of its own contradictions. The truth had been there all along, written in bone structure and blood. It had taken a single photograph to make it undeniable, to force everyone to see what they had been trained to ignore. In that seeing, in that acknowledgement, the first seeds of change had been planted. Marcus never forgot his mother's hands, always moving, always working, but gentle when they touched his face. She had given him life in a world that tried to deny his humanity. She had loved him even when that love was dangerous. And in the end, the face she had given him became the face that helped others see the truth. That was her legacy. That was freedom. Sometimes the truth we've been running from is written on our very faces, waiting for the right moment to be seen. Marcus and William's story reminds us that injustice thrives in silence and shadows, but crumbles when exposed to light. One photograph became a mirror, forcing a nation to confront the humanity it had tried to deny. Their shared face proved what should have always been obvious, that beneath the labels society creates, we are all equally human, equally deserving of dignity and freedom. The chains that bound Marcus were real, but the lies that allowed those chains to exist were fragile. Truth, once seen, cannot be unseen. And sometimes that's where freedom begins, not in the breaking of physical chains, but in the courage to look directly at an uncomfortable truth and refuse to look away. We all carry photographs in our lives, moments when truth demands to be acknowledged. The question is, will we have the courage to look?